despite the fact that we've seen certain leagues open up to crowdless stadiums, sports are back in action. Most of the sports, though, that are doing this are not the sports that we as Americans care about. So I will skip those, like soccer. Um, I'm just being honest. We're not big on soccer, but it is running. They are playing some games. I think something else I saw was, NASCAR was about to be coming back. I think golf has had a couple of different events here and there. So stuff that we don't really not the big stuff. We're not talking about football, basketball, whatever. I know Major League Baseball is in talks about doing things like that. I know the NBA is trying to figure out what they're going to do with the last season. If they should give a championship away. There's a lot of discussion there. But the big talk right now, this particular week, is actually the NFL. The NFL is probably the only sports league that this whole Corona thing doesn't really affect because this is their off season. They found a way to do the draft, which is the big thing. Now they're preparing to see what they're going to do as far as the early season, the preseason, which would should be about August. Theoretically, when this whole Corona thing's supposed to end, but considering the protest and the longevity of that, whether or not they think there's a second wave, a lot of stuff in question there. But with warm weather, they should be pretty safe. Um, but why they're making news is that their head of the NFL has admitted to being wrong about the whole Colin Kaepernick kneeing situation. So for those of you who may have forgotten, a couple years back, Colin Kaepernick decided to throw a protest about the treatment of African Americans in this country by the police. And essentially every game he would be kneeling during the anthem, right? Nothing crazy, no shouting. A lot of people took it as a publicity stunt because he was, at the time moved back to second string quarterback, sitting on the bench. Um, at the same time, many were very upset because there was a game played on 9/11 where he did it, and that's really where everything came to a fold. And you know, they pretty much blackballed him from the NFL because of it. There was an attempt at him possibly coming back, and they tried to just knock that away after there's a lot of momentum to bring Cap back. I mean, when he was removed out the league, he had done pretty well. Uh, you know, he was played for the conference championships, played for the NFL championship. Um, he still even had a decent 8 game season before getting bumped back and being pushed aside and all that other nonsense. So he's still considered a physically capable player, even up to the tryout that he recently had in this past year. But because he decided to not even speak up, but kneel down, but stand up for the cause, they got rid of him. They said that he was trying to just cause waves and was disrespectful to the military and disrespectful to the government and to the people and the police and all this other nonsense that wasn't true. But frankly, if people paid attention to him then on a positive note, if people stood with the movement, if a league that's 70%, if not 80% black, everyone actually had the guts to kneel with him and screw the executives, you'd have more people talking and standing up for social justice 2 and 3 years ago. Maybe some of the reform that we're seeing now in these last 2 3 weeks would have been started. And that's not the sole responsibility of the NFL. But when you have a lot of people bashing someone who's trying to show support for his people and for social justice, to point out a misgiving in this country, that's not disrespect to the country. That's literally trying to ask the country to help, to fix itself. Him kneeling on 9/11 wasn't disrespect to the nation, but the injustice done to minority groups and especially black people doesn't change just because on this one day we have to remember all those lives. That same day a brother's probably unjustly rocked up. Just that's the fact of the situation. Not to make light of it, but it just is. And so he knelt on that day. It wasn't just to disrespect the nation. It's that on any day, Monday to Sunday, weekends, holidays, whatever, the cause is still real, right? There's still an injustice in this country. On a day that we're all supposed to unite, instead of being upset that he knelt, everybody should have been kneeling with him, you know. And now that there's this mass global movement behind Black Lives Matter, um, the NFL admits wrongdoing because they see everyone acting behind it. Everyone, if they were able to avoid every video of every black person killed in the last 5 to 10 years, they couldn't avoid this one. And whether or not this is an apology to the community, to Kaepernick, out of pure sincerity, because I don't want to take away from the fact that it could be, or whether it's a completely monetary, political, strategic move to, essentially kind of say, my bad, you were right. Please keep giving us money when the league comes back. Whatever the case may be, it's just a really positive note that they're admitting to their wrongdoing, right? And to everyone who is out there protesting, you know, it's not to say that he started this, and he definitely didn't, but that was when the peaceful protest began. If you're wondering why you have people now acting out in violence, whether it be rioting for George, whether it be rioting out of the rage and sadness of this being a repetitive thing, whether it be looting from the big companies, because frankly, the way that the economic system works, we can't get this stuff anyway, and right now we can. Whatever the reason may be, the peaceful protest started then. When you see the violence acting up now, maybe you could have avoided it by standing behind Kaepernick 2 and 3 years ago. On that note, we're going to head to our first commercial break, and when we come back, we'll talk about it. Hey everybody, I'm Lil D.
I am Javier Luis.
I'm Alex Polanco.
I'm Apollonia Cruz.
And I'm Kelly Kaboo.
I am Shirley Phillips.
I am Emmanuel Ansule.
Do you know 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence
During their lifetime?
And domestic violence and abuse can happen to anyone,
regardless of gender, race, or other factors.
2 out of 3 homicide cases are
Females who were killed by a family member or intimate partner.
As domestic violence victims, they face high rates of depression,
Sleep disturbances,
anxiety,
flashbacks, and other emotional distresses.
And without help, witnesses of domestic violence are more vulnerable to become abusers themselves.
Thus continuing the cycle of violence in the next generation.
Hello, I'm Charles Aloma. Join the LDM network and Safe Horizon and take a step into changing these facts. So if you are or know someone that is being abused, please call the City Domestic Hotline at 1-800-621-4673. So that is 1-800-621-HOPE.
speak up,
Speak out.
And make a difference.
And just know that you don't have to deal with this alone. There is help.
All right, and we're back. So, a couple of things happening. I want to start off on the local level, right? So, big thing in New York has been the protests, especially in Brooklyn and Manhattan. They've been holding multiple protests for the last 10 days now. Which, in all honesty, it's a beautiful thing to see that a movement's actually lasting this long, considering that most of these things usually die down at about this point. But people are really out there every day. Probably one of, if not the biggest positive effect of the coronavirus. You know what? No, it's definitely the second biggest effect. The biggest effect is that carbon emissions were down so much that the earth is healing itself. I don't think any of us can beat that, no matter what kind of social justice cause we fix. It's like the planet isn't gonna try and wipe us out that much faster. So I'm very happy about that. But no, this is big, and I feel like because not as many people are working, a lot more people are able to work from home. A lot of people are actually able to find time to come out and literally stand up for what they believe in. So it's a beautiful thing, and one of the only positives out of Corona is that we have the time to focus, time to organize, time for the world to actually see this. Countries that are known for their own racism are standing up for social justice in America, pretty much because they're telling America, the American government likes to put their foot in too many places, and they're like, well, practice what you preach, which I think is valid. When you have people in Japan, holding their own marches for people in America, in a country where many don't really think of the Japanese really being fond of African Americans. Not to say it's true, but just that's the perception people have, and to literally see them out there holding their own social justice march, I think that's great. But on a local level, it's led to a 8 p.m. curfew, which kind of sucks. So that's been the latest thing here, is that people have been protesting, both peacefully and not peacefully, But because of some of the rioters out there, the city started to shut down at 8. Now, the fact of the matter is, I think what the the curfew. Oh yeah, well it was supposed to be ending today anyway. It was supposed to be. Well, yeah, you know what I'm saying. It was supposed to, say it was the last be home by 8 kind of a thing. But the fact of the matter is, the city's also supposed to open up tomorrow. Still, I'm not sure how many businesses want to after a lot of the rioting and looting that's been taking place. But phase one is supposed to begin, and then I think it's 2 days later they're saying we'll see the numbers to see if we're gonna have to shut back down because of all the protests possibly spreading corona. I think they said there's already like 19,000 new cases or whatever the case may be. But um, on a local level, it's very confusing time as far as what people are doing, and I feel like the curfew just makes people want to act out more. The first day of curfew was until 11, and honestly, you know, people were just like, "Oh, we're gonna be out past 11." You move it to 8 o'clock, we're gonna be out past 8. There's no point in fighting it. You want people to stop. You want the looting to stop. You want the rioting to stop. Instead of, hey, we can pass this bill next week. No, pass that bill today. There's no reason why the people who make the rules can't keep their doors open late. We got to end Congress today at 9 o'clock, at 5 o'clock. No, keep it open till 9. Keep it open till 10. This person isn't here. Everybody else is zooming votes. Why can't we zoom this? You know what I'm saying? There is a new bill that is about to be passed here locally. It's called "Say Their Name," which just sounds like a really bad Destiny's Child song, but it's supposed to be about the different people who have become unfortunate martyrs on this social justice issue. Um, so what this bill is supposed to do is to ban the use of chokeholds, which I think it's good to do this and make it official law. But if we all remember during the Eric Gardner case, the reason why people were mad were that the chokeholds were deemed as illegal moves anyway. It didn't exactly stop them from using it. So to make that a state law now is kind of like, well, wasn't it always a law? So just that's my only thing about that. I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just kind of just like, really, you're just rewriting it. Um, Another thing that's supposed to do is that it is supposed to make it so that the background records of any officer under investigation for excessive use of force would, like, any of their disciplinary actions or anything in their history would actually be open for viewing, right? Like the people can see it. It wouldn't just be the lawyers. It wouldn't be something in the background of the case. It'd be something at the very forefront. The same way that people are trying to bring to forefront what George Floyd's past record was, right? It's just something that should have always been, right? If we have an officer brought up on excessive force now, how many complaints were there beforehand? What has been done about these complaints? I think they were saying that there were about 16 different cases for the man who killed George Floyd that were either under investigation or were, for disciplinary action, or were already deemed like, yeah, he already did it. Yeah, all of them. So you already have a record of aggressive officers, and you send 4 of them to go after someone who already has a prior record and has dealt with one of the cops in particular on a very personal level. That just sounds like things could have gone left. Not to say they should have, but you should know that that's a negative situation waiting to happen. So that's something that they want to bring out there. Another thing is that the attorney general will be personally prosecuting all police cases, right? Which now it means that you can't necessarily have that whole law and order cohesiveness that has protected officers for years, when the head of the law is literally persecuting the order. So I think that holds the officers to a certain level of accountability, because let's be real. If there's going to be any cohesiveness in these sort of things, whether or not it's legal or not legal, it'll be with the lawyer and the judge, right? The law side is going to stick together. So that means officers have to be held more accountable for their actions, because they're, if the attorney general is going to be prosecuting, they don't want to take an L. Let's just be real. They don't want to take an L. I think that was one thing that a lot of people were very happy about in this particular Floyd case, is that the attorney general were going to be prosecuting the officers personally, because it should lead to a conviction. If your top lawyer in the state is going after these guys in an open and shut case, there's no blue shield to protect those officers in a sense, right? And not to say that every officer brought on charges is guilty. I'm not going to say that. I think there's enough evidence in videos to show that there are a lot of guys who've gotten off that shouldn't have. That I will say. But when you have the attorney general doing it, you're more likely going to get a conviction instead of these. Why is this not even? This is only going to grand jury. Like what's going on here? That whole Eric Gardner situation to me, how that guy didn't get put on criminal charges, even on a manslaughter charge, it still goes right over my head, right? And yet this Floyd case, which is a brilliant thing, another thing I wanted to mention, Derek is being brought up on murder 2 charges. Something that I even was saying over a week ago is probably the furthest this could go. You're not going to get that, number 1, murder 1, premeditated, not all of that, nah. But there's a prior history here, a prior history of the officer having, aggressive force against minority people, let alone the fact that he has a personal relationship with Floyd from work or whatever, Floyd's priors, whatever the case may be. There's enough there to show that there could have been more intent into the case, and so now he's getting prosecuted to murder 2. I think they're still keeping also the manslaughter charge. I don't think they're keeping the murder 3. And if, the other guys are going to get manslaughter. All officers in this case are now being brought up on charges because, regardless of whether or not the takedown was necessary, regardless of Derek being the one on his neck, nobody even attempted to remove Derek when Floyd, especially at the point where Floyd passed out, right? And that's where you get this from being a manslaughter to a murder charge, because at the point that this man was completely unconscious, without a doubt, well, no matter what claims you make, he can't be a threat if he's already knocked out, right? And normally when strangulation occurs, it's not an immediate death at the point of passing out. It is when you continue to suffocate the person past their unconscious state. That is where it becomes, a murder charge. So these guys are at least part of the manslaughter aspect of this, where they didn't intentionally do anything to kill him, but they did nothing to prevent the guy who killed him. And they're on duty, protect and serve, right? But the first word there is protect. The serve is also very relevant too, but protect, I can't stress enough. But in a better side of things, right? Because there's a lot of negative news, especially in a topic like there's a lot of negative side to it. But one thing that has happened that I thought was something that maybe every state should adopt is that Pennsylvania has officially made Juneteenth official holiday of the state, right? A recognized holiday of the state. Now, you know what I'm saying? Because Yom Kippur comes and Rosh Hashanah comes. The Jewish brethren, they get the day off, right? Every Saturday, somebody got to help them press a button. So can a brother get a day off for Juneteenth? It's already the weekend. We always celebrate it on the Saturday. But that's something I think that, especially in this time where we're trying to show unity and support and respect for our African American brothers and sisters out there, especially a state like New York, I think we should all adopt it. I know you're not gonna have a lot of a black population in many states, and if those states decide not to, sure. And I think that's why I'm not also pushing for this to be a national thing. But if you're a state that knows you have a very large African American population, right? They make up a solid majority of, or a solid percentage of your community. If nowhere else, at least in your major cities. I think this is a good way to show support right now, especially in a time where a lot of people are lashing out because of the rage, the years of oppression built up, the years of blindness, finally coming about. I think it's a good way for governments and to show support. Even if businesses wanted to do this, they wanted to recognize this for their employees. Even on that small of a level, it's a small sense of unity there, and I think that it would represent more than it actually is. But also for the African American community, I think it's a really big deal for us to even be aware of this. So one thing, and why this has never been something really brought up before, is that most African Americans don't even know about Juneteenth. And you'll see more in media these days, shows that feature African American cast members, especially if it's a show that's predominantly African American. They've been trying to put the word out about what Juneteenth is, and essentially, it's a day to celebrate when the last of the slaves were actually freed, right? When we as a people were officially freed, because after the Emancipation Proclamation, we didn't have the internet. It wasn't like there was one mass email sent out like "Let the Negroes go." It took time for the message to get around, and not just to get around, but to get around to the point where even the black people knew about it, right? Because if you were someone who was a slave at the time, if your slave owner didn't tell you nothing, you would not know anything. So it took a whole another 2 years, and it wasn't until June, that sort of a thing. So I think it's just good for black knowledge, right? Black history is always something that's very muddy and gray and stuff because there's not a lot of it people have known or are spoken about or know what's true and what's fact. And this is one truth that we do know of and one truth that should be celebrated. So I think more and more states should pick up behind PA and start, initiating a celebration for Juneteenth. We have New York is a city, let alone a state that has how many different parades for how many different groups, right? Like let's do a Juneteenth parade. You have a Juneteenth parade the weekend before Pride or something. Let black people come out, show love, have black gays come out and have their float and everything, and everybody have that sense of unity as a minority community. And maybe even doing something so close to Pride would be something that helps the black community accept more and more of our brothers and sisters who are a part of the alphabet people. We know we are as a community aren't always the most welcoming to that idea, and so I think that might be a good way to help both groups and those who ride the borderline of both to kind of start recognizing and building that unity too. I mean, black people now, we can't just be asking for the world to stand behind us if we don't show support for every other group fighting for equality as well. That's just where I stand on that particular issue. But I think it's a pretty good idea. A couple of other things that I thought were great were that social media is finally back behind Kanye. I'm loving this. So after all these years of being mad at Kanye trying to do what needs to be done to help out Chicago, people for whatever reason just started trying to pay more attention to Kanye lately. And when they really looked into the stuff that they were talking crap about for years, they found out that Kanye has been giving money to the Democratic Party, was giving money to Hillary Clinton's campaign. Oh yeah, Kanye's giving money to different groups trying to help black communities, especially in Chicago, and college funds that are geared towards African Americans. I mean, something that Kanye's always been about, talked about, and tried to do, giving back to the community that he came from, for the black people that are growing up in the same situation that he grew up in. That's such a big surprise. I think one thing that really got people over is that anything that he had related to MAGA, Make America Great Again, he recently threw out. Why? Because there's no reason to kiss Trump's butt anymore. After this big thing with George Floyd, it really doesn't seem like African Americans are going to vote for Trump because of the checks. It really seems like, Biden has a shot because they're mad at what this country has become. And the fact that even right now, Donald Trump messed himself up by not just clearly calling cops out on their BS, right? One thing Trump has always tried to do, because he focuses more on the green than he does on any other colors, is that he doesn't pick a side. He doesn't call out white supremacists. He doesn't necessarily say he hates black folks, but he doesn't exactly back white supremacy either. He just kind of rides the borderline of not doing anything. I mean, you can say it's smart, but in this case, when even the NFL has to admit they're wrong, bro, just come on and be like, yeah, we got to fix the cop stuff. And even put all the blame, but it has to be done on the local level. The U.S. government can't police every police force. Throw them under the bus and back aside, bro. Why can't you do it? Why can't we know? I don't know why everyone is so quick to harp on Trump, harping on the dumbness of the Red Party, right? But he's a New York guy whose most of his friends were, Democrats. I think other than possibly Rosie O'Donnell, right? Most of what he's done has been, for Democratic progression. I mean, big business, sure. Don't get me wrong on that. But he's not really one who's been anti-social issues his entire, business career. He was too big of a celebrity, too big in the public eye. He had to talk the talk. You know what I'm saying? Eh, dude, just use the New Yorker in you and be progressive for one little thing. It would have given you a shot at presidency. It's too late now. So now that there's no, bring back who? Oh, bring back Andrew Yang. You got a shot. Now. I mean, no, but in all honesty, this was Donald Trump's opportunity to really like seal away a re-election, and he let it go. So now that there's no reason to even have to deal with him, Kanye has no reason to even act as if he supports him. I've said it from the beginning. Kanye is only dealing with Donald Trump because Trump promised to help Chicago. That's it. He was never really backing Donald Trump because he backs Donald Trump. And I love how the internet's finally getting this. Like, finally understanding this. And there's evidence. That's the best part. So, shout out to whoever is watching Kanye so deeply that now you're able to reveal all this stuff to people. Like, that's great. Another big thing, John Boyega had a very impassioned speech about, social justice. To the point where he was like, I don't even know if this is going to get me blackballed, but I have to speak on it. And one thing about Hollywood and media and whatever is that they try not to go too far when speaking about issues because they don't want to deny monetary value from certain groups. But he didn't care, and he spoke about something that really meant a lot to him. As someone of African descent, as someone of a darker skin tone who can't even deny their African descent, right? And how quickly Hollywood has backed him up. I think that's a beautiful thing. We already know that most artists are very liberal, but industry is industry, right? And despite this, despite being a very opinionated individual, he's getting a lot of support. A lot of people are already trying to figure out how can we get him a job, but how can we protect black actors? How can we create a way where they can have more representation? I think one thing everyone has spoken about over the years is how certain TV shows, certain movies, there's not a lot of black characters. You'll see black people everywhere in real life, but on TV and in movies, we're a side note. And I feel like this doesn't just apply for African Americans. I feel this applies for other groups. We don't see a lot of Latinos outside of Latino media, right? If you're not watching Telemundo or Univision, you're not going to see a lot of Latinos on TV. In a lot of movies, they're not even, support characters in most things. Unless they're already some super famous Latino person, then they get to be, in a movie or whatever the case may be. Unless it's a majority Latino cast, right or wrong. We already know about the Asian community, and I feel like the difference there is that in the Asian community, acting is also not something viewed as something to pursue. So that has a lot of industry, but also cultural stuff that needs some adjustment where now it's viewed as even an option. So I love the idea of creating this for the black community. I think that this is a progressive movement that should also be seen as more multicultural. And it's an opportunity to figure out how can we get more minorities, not just blacks, into these roles that we should be represented in, right? It just makes more sense. A cast of Friends, and I love the show. To this day, I still love the show. But they're in New York City. How many black people off of all those seasons did you actually see on the show? Like, really? When Ross finally got a black girlfriend, like, other than her, how many did you see? Just even in the background, just background characters. That's what I'm talking about there. It just doesn't make sense. But yeah, and at the same time, what's something that's coming out now is that they're creating an app that should be released on July 4th that will be in celebration of a lot of black created media, so comedy shows and dramas and stuff like that. What you can do to see that, you can go and I want to make sure I get this right. I think it's blackcomedycenter.com. If you visit that website, they'll be talking about what kind of programming they're going to be initiating on their launch July 4th. And they, it's a celebration of black artistry on this new app. So, to see what we have done, what we have made, produced, directed, written, acted in, it's going to be a new app for us to be able to celebrate us as a people. So I think that's something positive for the community, especially right now, and also something for a lot of other groups, and that they're promoting as a way for other races to enjoy and learn about what we've contributed, in modern art in the recent years. So I think that's a really cool idea, that a lot of people should look to. Before we go to our next commercial break, one thing I want to mention is that within the riots here and within the protests here in New York, there's been a lot of back and forth between the cops, and the people. To all those who are rioting, to all those who are looting, just don't do it in our communities, bro. What's the point of hurting our own people? Like the way y'all toss Fordham Road make no sense, and it's because of y'all, right? Y'all acting a fool. The cops are being very aggressive. Two cops were recently suspended in Brooklyn for attacking protesters and not handling the situation. We had a state senator, pepper sprayed in the eyes by police, peacefully protesting in Brooklyn. Look, I'm all for it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking the physical aggression of those protesters. There's a lot of built up frustration, a lot of it. But be smart about it. If you're gonna go and attack 34th Street, Times Square, big business, whatever, do what you do. But don't hurt the mom and pop shops on your own hood. There are grocery stores closing down, locking up, where people won't be able to get food because of your actions. Don't do it in your own home, right? Don't poop where you eat, man. Be smarter, right? And at the same time, I really don't want you doing it. Not right now. We're seeing progression made even on a legislative level now. Like, calm down, see what's happening in the next week or two, and really, we gotta get these cops to be a little cooler, where they're not attacking the ones who aren't acting wrong, who are out there just chanting and asking for change. Don't get me wrong, I get it. I know why you're doing what you're doing, why you're out there and you're trying to just let out that frustration. You've been locked up in the house for 2-3 months. I get it, I understand it, but we gotta do better as a people, folks. We just gotta do better. I don't need this 8 o'clock curfew nonsense no more. All right, so Charles, if you could, we're going to our next commercial break. We can come back to movies and our fans of the week. That was quick. You said quick commercial. You're right. I can't even front. I got a chance to catch my breath real quick though. But yes. So I wanted to start off with the fans of the week. We ready for that? So we have a couple of people here who are news. So the first one off of Facebook, I believe, is Rose. We have Rose there, right? And she's been a pretty recent fan. I think she became a follower less than 2 weeks ago, and already very active, very on the page. So congratulations to you, and thank you for showing love the past week and change. We also have Joe Frenza, who has been following the page for about the last year, and I think you guys seen his face before. Pretty active followers. So thank you for showing love and support. On the Instagram side is my friend Misguided Ghost. I just love the name. Like, how can you be a misguided ghost? I never asked her. I got to do that. Cause just where does that come from? And next is Cadillac Gorilla, who honestly is one of the few meme kings I respect on a high level on Instagram. Anybody who knows my Instagram page, anybody who knows the Facebook page, is like, when it comes to memes, I do my thing. But this guy right here, this guy is on the same level, if not better. And of course, the picture there, I think yeah, exactly. It's the perfect reason as to why he calls himself Cat Daddy. It's not just a wannabe pimp name. He takes it seriously. I love it. So shout out to you, and definitely follow that page. That page is hilarious what he be posting up. But the picture of the week, it's something that I feel, like I said, I'm in support of the aggressors, right? Every time that there's a movement, when there's change, there's a Martin and a Malcolm, right? That's when we get real change, when they see that we mean well, but we can make things hot. So for those cops who aren't on the wave, who aren't, in disgust of the fact of what their their blue brothers are doing, and feel that, oh, we need to be this aggressive. If you think that we give you reason by existing to shoot us, don't think we can't shoot back. We can exude as much, if not more, force than you're able to put out if we really want it. But that's not what we're asking for. We're not trying to start a war. We're trying to ask for peace, respect, and justice. We're asking you to do your jobs, right? The jobs that, a lot of us pay for. You're a civil servant. Our tax dollars make up your salary. There's no reason why you should be attacking people. Frankly, you shouldn't be killing people, because the only way you can ask for a raise is there's enough money in the government funds. Let's be real. Like, us existing, you get paid. Just think about that. Hell, if you're able to make proper arrests, you even have correctional officers now getting jobs. I'm going to be honest about it. If you want to talk about why this is so wrong, you're screwing yourself as much as you're, hurting people who don't deserve it, but you're screwing yourself. You're doing yourself an injustice. I'm trying to give you the selfish reason why you should be acting right. Doesn't make sense. But if you want to go to war, we can do it. Hell, y'all don't know how a lot of black folk get guns in the first place, so don't make it all right? Now, off of all that note, everybody's still stuck at home for the most part, right? Some cities have opened up phase 1. I think there might be a couple that have even gone to phase 2 out of this 4-phase system, but nobody has museums open yet and entertainment institutions. Yeah, I can't figure out how Dave and Buster. Oh, Broadway's not gonna. They're not planning to be open until I think almost August or September. But I still can't figure out how Dave and Buster's stock is going up. That's eat and play, like dine in and play games. And Dave and Buster's stock is going up. I only know this because I have Dave and Buster's stock, but can't figure that out. I don't really care. I just, wow. But the food is good. I cannot complain about the food. The price of the food maybe, but not the food itself. But no, just this. If we're all still stuck at home, if you're not out protesting, and there, some people knowing that the cops are, especially these last few days, the cops have been aggressive. They're not trying to go out there. We are protesting for change because a brother already died. I'm not trying to be the next one on the list. You feel me? Like, so I'm not mad at you if you ain't out there. Everybody that's going out there, and I know them personally. I'm always just like, be safe. Just be safe. That's the only thing I can say to them, because what they're doing out there is brave. But for the rest of us stuck at home, we watching stuff. We watching TV, we watching movies, So let me tell you the do's and don'ts from this week's grouping, right? So Netflix dropped a lot of animation recently. One of which I'm still getting through because I watch it at a very specific time of my day, called Drifting Dragons. And I'm midway through the series right now. I'll give a full review after I finish it, but that's one you definitely can't sleep on, folks. If you're someone who enjoys the artistry of Japanese animation, you're gonna love the visuals of the series. If you're someone who's been bashing CGI animation, and for me, I'm about 50-50 on it, because after you see Berserk in CGI, you're gonna hate it. But then when you see Kengan Ashura, you're kind of like, maybe. Watching Drifting Dragons, it must be a studio thing, because this is a CGI series that is actually done very well. And if you're just someone who enjoys a really good story, this show gives you all the feels. Again, haven't finished it yet, so this is only the little halfway mark. But I would say if you're already an anime fan, give this one a shot. If you're not an anime fan, let me finish it before I tell you to watch it. I'll just give you due justice. But Drifting Dragons, pretty good series. Also dropped recently was Dorohedoro, which is the story of a guy who got turned into an alligator man, who of course they call Cayman, which I think is hilarious, like the actual gator. And he's trying to figure out who made him a gator and how can he kill them, so that way the spell is reversed, right? In this world, you have wizards and you have test subjects, as they call the normal people, because wizards practice their magics on them. This guy has amnesia and is trying to solve what made him a gator with his friends, and they're all badasses. So essentially, that's the point of the show. There's an evil organization of wizards that he has to fight. It sounds like a really typical anime, but it's actually really witty. It's very. I was laughing my butt off, but the action sequences are also really good. They're up to a lot of other regular action shonen series. So I give this series a 4 out of 5. Watching the first season, um, I think the only thing about it is that sometimes they like to delve into the past of certain characters at the wrong time, right? Like we're so wrapped up in the main storyline. Now's not the time for a side story. So that's me as a viewer. I know some people who really appreciate character development at any moment. Not that I don't appreciate character development, but if I'm in the middle of a fight, at the ending of one episode, the next episode doesn't even tell me about the history of a character. Give me that after that character got their butt whooped, as they're about to die or something. Not in the middle of the fight. Not the dead middle of a fight. That's just where I come from. That to be continued world is not where I like to be. Uh, um, we also have Fuller House. They had their series finale. I think a lot of fans of the original series in the 80s and 90s enjoyed this remake or continuation, if you will. I know I was a big fan of the show back in the days, and even this new series I've been a very big fan of. They ended the whole series with the triple wedding that they alluded to from the season before, so thank God that they actually continued from where they left off at. And I honestly, I enjoyed the storytelling. I think it was good. I think this is a show where if it were to come back every 20 years, one, it would make sense. But two, I think it's enjoyable. There's nothing wrong with a show that has like, that classic 90s, 80s, 70s, family feel. It may not always hit in a market where we all want that non-PC stuff now. We want that adult content. But every now and again, you need something that warms your heart. I give this a 5 out of 5. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It wrapped up everything very well. And this is definitely for a certain group of people who just like that nostalgia. Those people who like a little bit of clean comedy. That's what this is for. That sitcom, that old feel with the live studio audience. It's a great show, honestly. I'm maybe a little too sentimental about it, but a lot of people they're gonna like the cheesiness of it. Yeah, yeah. It has an open ending if they because the thing about I think the best thing about these streaming platforms is that the audience has a bit more say than on television networks. Um, where even though they wrapped everything up, right? They left. This is a show where you can leave it open because you can come back at any time, at any point in the storyline in the future, right? The kids are going off to college and you want to do a special, or you want to, now the kids are literally the kids became the leading cast members of this show. You can do that. It's a real world kind of a show. Like, where would you end a show like Family Guy or The Simpsons? Exactly. It's that same principle. So to leave it kind of open where we can continue this later, we can come back to this later. If the audience really was like, hey, we don't want you to end now, and they know they're going to get the viewership, Netflix is easily going to make a season 6 and 7 of this show. Easily. This is supposed to be the series finale, but if fans want more, they'll do it. They wanted to give it a Sense 8, and fans were so pissed off about it that they were like, you know what? We may not be able to do a full season, but we'll at least give you a series finale movie. If we can at least get that out of some of these series that we all love, it's more than what we can ask for on major network television. So I just like the capability of these streaming platforms actually listening to the audience. I think what is it? Lucifer was supposed to be done. That season 4 that it first went to Netflix because Fox didn't pick it back up. Fans asked for more. We're getting 2 more seasons of Lucifer. This is what I'm talking about. We need to have our voices heard, and I mean, like, literally give us 1 or 2 more seasons, because we know when you're just going for what the fans want, it gets oversaturated and becomes garbage. Look at Supernatural, right? Let's be real. Yeah, a lot of people got bored of Supernatural. Another thing that dropped off Netflix was Trailer Park Boys. I love this show. This show isn't exactly King of the Hill, but it's one of those shows where you see white trash like people, and it's a way where anyone of any race can love them, maybe subliminally helping us deal with some of the stuff that we deal with as a society. I give the show a 4 out of 5. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot about this show that's definitely like not for everyone. That's why it doesn't get a perfect score. Way too much. But this is that classic, Comedy Central, hijinks, rednecks doing fun stuff. Like they got $500,000 and thought they were the richest people in the world of all time. Kind of a situation, right? It's 420 friendly for everyone. They're always drinking, getting to these. I just love it. It's a bunch of hillbillies doing some nonsensical stuff for all of our amusement in an animated format, and it is great. It's if Seth MacFarlane didn't have to be censored, I feel this is a show that he would create. I think that's the best way to say it. If he had no reason to be PC, this would be the type of show he would create. So yeah, love it. A couple of comedy specials were also released. The first one is Hannah Gadsby, called Douglas, which I believe she said was the name of one of her pets. I gotta give this stand-up a 3 out of 5. I don't think it's for everyone. It's a bit dry at first. She literally spends the first half of her stand-up telling you about the second half of her stand-up, right? Like just setting it up. This was a stand-up that was about 2 hours, and you felt like you were watching something for about 2 hours. I've immediately afterwards watched 2 more stand-ups that were about a little over an hour or 90 minutes, and they felt like they were 20 minutes. That's how entertained I was. This one, the jokes are funny, don't get me wrong. I can't discredit her as a comedian on that note, but there's no reason why you're going to tell me, like literally spend 30-40 minutes to tell me that in another 30-40 minutes I'm going to laugh at something I forgot about 30-40 minutes ago. And you think I'm just, she does that. She ends the stand up on a hilarious note because she does that. I understand what the thought process was behind it, why this was a long stand up, but it was a long stand up. So if you're someone who has the time, watch it. She's, Australian, coming with that whole I didn't know this about America viewpoint. It's good material, just really stretched out. Like when you're just tired of, it's like that 2 years of Naruto nobody asked for. There we go. That is it. Also we have Kenny Sebastian, most interesting man in the room. Now this is you guys know I've been big on the Indian comics and Indian comedies the last year or so. He's another Indian comic who was doing his stand-up special back home. And I'm going to give this stand-up a 3.5 out of 5. I think this is a must-watch. Why it's not rated higher than that is that the comedy was good, but honestly, he is one hell of a singer, and I was pissed off he didn't sing more. And I'm like, damn, I just want you to sing. I don't even want your jokes anymore. So I just had mixed emotions because I wasn't getting what I wanted from him as a performer. But this is a pretty good stand-up. I loved the way that this whole stand-up ends. It was literally perfect. And everything about him is very observational humor. It's not just a bunch of brown jokes. It definitely is a comparison of brown people and Americans and all that. I mean, your comedy is based off from where you grow up from. And this was just, the way this ends was just so good that if there's any flaw the rest of the show, you're gonna still love the ending. Like that's what makes this so good. And this really, I was laughing from the beginning to the end. It's just, I really wanted him to just sing. If he just needs to do his concert, he needs to switch careers, become a music artist, and just sing. I would buy that album in a minute. Also, Russell Peters, another brown comic, but he's he's a guy who grew up around black people. He's not afraid to tell you. He did a stand-up on Amazon called Deported, and I give this a 4 out of 5. This guy understands comedy. Period. He has a very good presence on stage. He very good routine. Interacts with the audience. He has his brown jokes. He has his general jokes. I was dying laughing at the moment he was talking about a man named Naga, because he's someone who grew up with black people. Put it all together yourself. And literally, I think at one point I start, one of these things you watch on the train, right? So I got through the first 20 minutes of it, and it left me with about another 40-45 minutes of the routine. And on my way home, I'm watching the stand-up. I didn't even realize, like, I almost missed my train stop. I was so caught up on it. Was still watching it walking home, and I don't know how it's like, those nights where you just end up home and when you're not in a sober state of mind, and I just ended up in my front door with the key pulling in before I realized, like, oh snap, I'm home. Like that's how drawn I was into this routine. A really easy watch. You're gonna be laughing. You're gonna be entertained. If you watch this, Russell Peters Deported. Now back to Netflix. They dropped a couple of other movies I thought were pretty interesting. So there's an old movie that I never realized or you found out why there wasn't a sequel to. So if you do know the answer, please let me know. But a movie called Priest, right? If I'm not mistaken, it's based off of a game, and essentially they're these chosen warriors who work for the church, who are sent out to stop a bunch of vampires from killing humanity. Very simple premise if you're a gamer into sci-fi or anything like that, right? But this movie is really well done as far as building, like the world building that they do. Even building in these really intricate relationships that by intricate I mean like there's a lot of background to each of these characters and why they act the way they act, and we only just hit the surface of it, and you still understand the complexity that exists for all of these guys. I think that's really cool. I think that's like really different for a movie that's only 90 minutes and is about some dudes beating up on some vampires. I really want to see more. This movie also has like Maggie Q in it, so there's like really good action scenes in it. I just don't know why there was never a part 2 or 3. I think even Hitman, right, based off of the game, they was supposed to have a 2 or 3, but I found out why the projects failed. That's what I never found out anything about. So if you do know, let me know, because this is on Netflix now, and if you're like, what is he talking about? You need to watch it. Watch it on Netflix. This is easily a good watch, especially for an action fan. But if not, if you're someone who likes sci-fi, they do enough world building, you'll enjoy the sci-fi of it. Their interpretation of vampires is also very unique. And it is, calling out the government of their world, but you can relate it, for their BS, for hiding stuff, especially if you're someone of Asian descent, called China, you would understand what they're doing. So I would recommend the movie Priest. Baki also came out with a part 3, or technically I think it's part 5, but whatever, that is a 3 to Netflix. And if you've been a Baki fan, this particular storyline has a lot of action and a lot less talking. Every episode has somebody getting their butt beat bad. I think what was most enjoyable was the fact that this entire season or not the entire thing, but the most of the season is about Baki versus Muhammad Ali. And they show a lot of love to Muhammad Ali in this particular series, and I love it. There's a lot of the Blurred community, has built a bridge with Japanese fans of anime and stuff like that, and a series like this just really puts it all together. I think one of my other favorite posts that was about to be Picture of the Week was Midoriya holding up Black Lives Matter from My Hero Academia, right? Like, this is just one of those series that just puts together the respect that the communities have for each other. And I just love the representation of that, especially in this, because they put Muhammad Ali like on this pedestal, and they put his son in, for the series, on their top tier fighters. They showed, and yet they don't take away from the characters that are from the series that we all love. They don't take away from their capabilities, their power levels, that sort of thing. And Baki is still what it's all about. And then they build into the arc about him versus his father. That becomes like the pinnacle. So this season has a lot for Baki fans to really enjoy. And if you're someone who hasn't gone to the series yet, start off where Netflix start off, so that way you see where some good fights start. Because the first part of Baki isn't on Netflix. Season 1, Season 2, that's not there. The first 2 arcs, that is for the real otaku to watch on the real otaku sites. But definitely give Baki a shot. Something else that popped up on Netflix was Too Hot to Handle, the reunion episode. I gotta admit to you, I was severely disappointed. Um, some of the post cat like the what happened after the show just was mildly disappointing. They didn't exactly talk to everyone I wanted them to talk to. I don't think the Zoom aspect of it also makes it great. I think what we look for in one of those like reunion episodes is the possibility of a scrap. You can't fight if you're all on Zoom. Nobody want to see that. That's what Instagram is for. Why are we making a whole episode about this? I think the timing was also wrong. Because why are they zooming this far after the show recording? Like, even if you're gonna do the reunion episode after you were on the island, you would have had time before Corona. So I think they were doing this at a point also where no one really cares. Like when it popped up on my thing, I just thought Netflix was, it says new episodes for like another month and a half after something's been out, and I thought it was one of those like, oh yeah, maybe that did come out but so long ago. This was not a really good recap. I'm only gonna give it a 2 out of 5 just because you finally get to see the face of the girl who was the announcer for the show. That's about it. That's the only thing that I found interesting, and she was just flirting with some people that it just didn't sit well with me. But yeah, so I give it that. And last but not least, I wanted to try a Hulu horror movie. So there's something that's called Our House that just was really disappointing. It was just, to speak about it, you have a family where the boy, one of the sons does a science experiment and bridges a gap with the dead, and very typical basis, like how do you go wrong with this? It just never really got interesting. Never. I'm not gonna say I feel like I lost 2 hours of my life, because to be honest with you, I forgot it was even playing for the majority of those 2 hours. I couldn't tell you what I was doing now, but I definitely didn't notice the 2 hours pass by until I look back up at the screen again, and I'm just like, oh yeah, this has been about 2 hours. Yeah, it's very forgettable. In fact, I was looking at my notebook earlier, just to go over oh yeah, what is on my list for this week, and when I had that name there, it literally took me 5 minutes to realize or remember what the movie was about, because it's so forgettable, and I've watched it within this last week. That's how bad that is. So do we have time for one more commercial break, or how many minutes do we have left? 2 minutes? Oh, all right. So I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have my timer on me. But yeah. So this next week, I'm going to be trying to watch more stuff. I want to do just an episode where all we're talking about is movies, and maybe break it down in categories for you. So I'm going to try and get through it. Remember, I'm still working during the daytime. I'm not one of the people who gets to wear no pants every day and get paid by the government. And I'm not saying that as a diss. I'm saying that out of pure jealousy. I want to be one of those people who gets paid to not put on pants. So yeah, so I want to do that for you guys. But also tonight, as soon as we end this, for those of you with the WWE Network, with those of you who want to just get the free trial so that way you can watch it for free tonight, there's going to be NXT TakeOver in your house. Hopefully you don't find anybody in your house that doesn't belong there. I'm just the name of the show. But if you do, just make sure they're wearing nothing but spandex. So next week we're going to talk a little bit about that for sure. There are a couple of exciting matches tonight. I'm really hoping that the Velveteen Dream gets to steal the title, just so that way Vince has enough leverage to not give Adam Cole everything he wants, but still give him enough to keep that storyline running, because I love their back and forth. But I'm really hoping the Velveteen Dream wins. So we will find out tonight, WWE Network, as soon as my show wraps up. Turn to that if you can. All right, folks. So this has been another episode of Will's Review, and we will talk to you guys.